Welcome. In this module, we'll take a look at the information security lifecycle, but specific to security validation. So we'll talk about security validation, what it is, how it is conducted. And let's start off by having a relook at the 8-step security hardening methodology in which we had the validation activity also. Now, this is the 8-step methodology which we used for security hardening. And if you recall, security hardening is the first step or first stage in the security transformation model. Now, in these 8 steps, the steps which were relevant to security validation are that in step number 5, we implement controls in the test setup, what we also call the pilot or the test setup. And the purpose of doing that is that the controls have to be tried out and a lot of configuration has to be done, and we have to try out a lot of options, and that should all be done in the pilot or the test environment so that there is no impact in the production or the live environment. Now, the next step after that is that once the controls have been applied in the test and pilot environment by IT teams, they have to be validated and checked in terms of the control implementation, and that is step number 6. So moving on, the validation during security hardening, which is step 1 of the security transformation model, the purpose of that validation as part of the security hardening, which was step number 6, as you saw on the previous slide, the purpose there was only to validate or confirm or check in simple terms that the intended controls, which were already agreed in the checklist, have been correctly and completely applied in the pilot setup. So there are 2 aspects here. There is a correctness and a completeness. And the correctness obviously refers that each control has been configured properly, and the completeness means that all the controls have been applied. If there were 40 controls, then all 40 controls have been completely applied and no partial work has been done. Okay. Now, as you can note, nothing has been mentioned regarding validation in the security hardening methodology 8 steps. There was no mention at all for production environment. When are we going into the, what type of validation activities will we conduct in the production environment? And we simply went into the production environment. And nothing has been mentioned for business launch either. So now what we need to do is we need to look at the more comprehensive information security lifecycle, which has 7 stages. And that lifecycle, which has 7 stages, which we'll just look at in the next slide, is not specific only to the security hardening. It mentions the complete lifecycle. And we looked at this lifecycle previously in one of the earlier modules as a complete lifecycle of information security. Now let's look at once again. Now this is the information security lifecycle, and it has 7 steps. Now the first step is requirements. You need to know what security requirements there are, and then you look at what the current posture is, and then you fix or remediate in step number 3. Then you actually implement the controls. And when we say implement controls, it includes both the pilot setup and the production environment. But the production environment does not mean that we have gone live. So we actually implement the controls, and in the pilot environment, a validation has already taken place and the controls have been implemented, and we are ready in the staging or the production environment, but the go live has not taken place. So step number 5 consists of test and validate. And then step number 6 consists of accredit, which is the accreditation process. Now, as you can see, the implementation of controls is step number 4. And in the information security lifecycle chart, we have already gone, this is a very important part, a very important point to note, that in the information security lifecycle chart that I showed you in the previous slide, we have already gone into the production environment, not go live, environment. So what the environment means is that it may be a specific server. We have loaded all the applications. We have implemented the controls. The pilot or test environment was already done previously. We have got the environment ready, and now we are waiting for the testing, the validation, and the accreditation. Okay. Now, the formal approval for business launch or go live has not yet been issued in step number 4. In fact, we are far from getting the go live permission. And that is because the security accreditation has not yet taken place. Okay, so if you look at the chart once again, the information security lifecycle, step number 5 is performance of testing and validation, which is an assurance activity. So we will perform several tests. We will validate the controls once again and make sure that it is confirmed that all the security requirements have been met, and that is done by testing and validation. And finally, we accredit. Now, once we accredit or certify that the application or the system or the environment or the device is secure, then one other step happens. In the information security lifecycle start, stage 5 and 6, which I just showed you, stage 5 was testing and validation, and stage 6 was accreditation. These refer to activities carried out in the production environment. I'm stating that once again for emphasis. In the production environment, but before go live has taken place. And if you look at right now, the step which happens before monitor and audit and after the accreditation is a very, very important step, which says the formal business launch or go live. Now, if you step back, we implemented the controls in step number 4. We got the production environment ready. We implemented all the controls. Then we test and validate because we have got the environment and the specific server which will become the go live server. That is the production environment. We perform the tests and validation on that specific server, on that particular environment, and that environment sometimes is called the staging environment. And then you accredit, and basically what we do is we gather all the information and we perform checks to make sure that all the required security work, testing, validation, process, documentation has all been done. And after the information security team accredits, then what happens is that the formal business launch or go live certification is given, which is called accreditation, and the business launch or go live actually takes place. So the formal business launch or go live only takes place after information security team accredits that the new application, portal, or service is secure. Business launch or go live also has other business related activities and dependencies such as marketing, sales, getting facilities ready. And the business launch or go live dependencies, apart from information security, which has to perform an accreditation and has to certify really that the environment is secure and the application or the system does not present any security risk. The other dependencies which are happening in parallel because the organization is trying to launch something, those are that the UAT and application bug testing and feature testing is taking place. And UAT is user acceptance testing. So the actual internal customer or the external customer has to accept that the application is working properly and is bug free. Facilities may be required to get ready. For example, it may be a data center or where the application is going to be launched, or it may be an office, or it may be a building which needs to get ready because that is the new facility, or it may be a sales and marketing launch ceremony which the business team has to get ready, or it may be a partner which needs to get ready because they are co-hosting an application in a external environment, or it may be an organizational service readiness because they need to give the service. A customer portal may be required and a call center may be required, and all those are required to get the service ready because the organization is going to launch the service. Now, while all of these activities are happening, the information security team is actually testing in the production environment. We have not gone live, as I explained, but they need to test in the production environment, which is going to actually become the real environment after the accreditation takes place, and then we allow the business to actually launch the application, and there are all these dependencies that I just mentioned. So let's look at the following steps in more detail and granularity in the following modules. There is a security validation. Let's look more in detail. Number 1. Number 2, we'll look at security testing, how it's performed, and then we'll look at security accreditation. And these were steps 5 and 6 of the information security lifecycle. So that's all that we have for this module, and in the next modules, let's look in more detail at these 3 aspects: validation, testing, and accreditation. Thank you.